die. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories are talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, the secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Paranormal Spectrum here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones from Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Today's episode is going to be pre-recorded, so if you have questions or comments throughout the show and we're ignoring them, we're not live today. We are recording this prior, so just so you know. Coming up, guys, if you want to check out all things we have here at the Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, we are deep into October, and we got some library presentations coming up and some paranormal investigations. You can get all the information at wisconsincaps.com. Click on the public events tab and it'll show you everywhere that we're going to be coming up. You don't want to miss it. We are doing some library presentations as well as paranormal investigations of those libraries. October 25th, we are going to be at the Neenah Public Library coming up here. So if you want all that, head on over and check it out. But we are going to get into it with my guest today. All right, guys, my guest is somebody that I have seen at many conventions over the past couple of years, and I don't know that much about. So I'm really excited personally to get a chance to finally talk to him one-on-one here. My guest is Nick Mulae. He is a paranormal investigator for over 20 years since he was 12 years old. He's investigated numerous haunted locations, included Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, Joliet Prison, and the Mansfield Reformatory, to name a few. He has also investigated cryptids, including Bigfoot in central Illinois, the Beast of Bray Road in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, the Mothman in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Bessie of Lake Erie, as well as the Melonheads of Kirtland, Ohio. Nick has been a member of the Midnight Paranormal Society from 2011 until 2019. Nick formed his own paranormal group in 2018 called the Illinois Paranormal Force, which operated several smaller paranormal, UFO, cryptid, and history groups that worked and investigated together. In 2021, he joined the Things Ghost Society and has been a member ever since and runs his own chapter in the state of Illinois. Nick is a horror film director and contributed to a book and narrates scary audio stories when it gets closer to October. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nick to the show. Nick, awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to this, man. Like I said before the show, I've seen you at so many events. We've chatted a little bit, but I'm excited to dig into this and learn all about you, because you're a fascinating individual and just all over the place. And just looking into the bio here, I mean, there's a lot going on. So how did you get started into all this?
So the way how I got started with it, it was a little bit different compared to like what a lot of other investigators would tell you. Like a lot of times you hear it's because it was either of a childhood experience or something like that. That wasn't the case for me. It was actually more of curiosity that brought me into it. And, it's even at a very young age, before I even turned 12, there were kind of origins to my interest in the paranormal genre as well. Like, growing up in the 90s, obviously, I'm still surprised to this day our parents got to let us watch this, because there were some pretty violent, disturbing episodes, but they got to let us watch The X-Files, which, at that time, was still relatively brand new and, of course, very popular. And that also introduced me into the horror genre, because by the time I was about 6 or 7 years old, I was already starting to be watching horror movies on a regular basis. And it was like, that was the real kind of start, and I worked my way up. And then a few years later, starting around the early 2000s, I was somewhat exposed to like my first paranormal show, but at that time, I didn't really believe much into it. I just thought it was just like, I don't know if you remember the old show, Scariest Places on Earth. Do you remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we used to watch it, during that time, but at that time, I didn't really believe much into it. We just thought that was it would air around the Halloween season. We just saw it as our typical Halloween show. But it really wasn't, like I said, until a few years later when I was 12. And typical preteen, 2005, I'm just running through the channel, see what's on television. And all of a sudden, I come across this show that's called Most Haunted on the Travel Channel. And this was, of course, this was also back when the Travel Channel used to only have like paranormal shows on Friday nights, not like how they did it now. And definitely before Ghost Adventures took over. So, I come across this show that's called Most Haunted. I'm like, what is that? That sounds really interesting. So I sat down and I began watching. In fact, I even still somewhat remember. I still remember the episode that I watched. I just can't remember exactly what location it was, in the UK, but I could still see parts, like images of it. I've been looking for it ever since, but it's like as soon after I started watching it, I just got hooked on these different shows about the paranormal stuff, and it drew me in completely. And it just became not just a fascination, but just became an obsession for myself.
That's interesting. Like you said, growing up in the 90s and stuff, I think that we're kind of around the same time there. There wasn't, I didn't have cable for one. So until I moved out on my own, I didn't have any of the shows to watch or anything like that. But when I did, again, right around Halloween, there was always these shows, like Ghost Hunters was big then later on. And Destination Truth was.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into the cryptids and all that stuff, because the shows were like an hour long, but they were half hour each. So he would go somewhere, Josh Gates would go like to a paranormal location, and he would go to a cryptid location in each episode. And I that's where I got my whole love of all that stuff and got hooked on it. But yeah, you're right. That kind of is a little bit more of a different startup, like coming into it from that aspect. Not many people have those shows as their lead in to this stuff.
Right. And especially a lot of the shows that they used to air, which, by the way, I'm very blessed to say this, but a lot of the old, because they didn't just show Most Haunted back then. They would also show like these one-time documentaries, and many of them were made years before, like 2000. Like some of these were from the mid to late 90s. So, well, I'm very happy. This is why I'm saying I'm blessed to say there is actually a YouTube channel out there that I don't know who the person is that runs it, but he goes by the YouTube name They're Here. If you do decide to look it up, make sure you type that in, but also type in paranormal as well, because there's probably other YouTube channels by that name. And this guy, whoever he is, he has uploaded several old paranormal documentaries and shows from like the late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. In fact, the first time that he uploaded anything was he almost uploaded every episode of Scariest Places on Earth. And I even thought to myself, I literally had a comment on him on one of his videos one time. I said, look, I don't know who you are, but whoever you are a legend right now, because some of this stuff has not been seen by any of us for like 20, maybe even almost 30 years now. So in my opinion, his YouTube channel, it's literally become the Paranormal Archives channel. I've never seen anyone else upload as many videos as he's done. And he still is to this day. He just uploaded another one just yesterday. So I guess he's really done a lot of taping. He's got a lot of tapes.
Well, that was back in the day, I'm big into pro wrestling and stuff. And, that's how people got the stuff before the internet. There was this tape trade, right? So all these people would VHS record for, the younger viewers that don't know what that even is. But, you pop a VHS in and record all these episodes, and then you would trade them so other people could watch them and stuff. And it's amazing how a lot of that stuff is filtering onto YouTube now. And you're getting to watch all these old commercials and television shows and stuff that, you remember growing up and thought that they've completely disappeared. And there's these people that still have them and have saved them.
I couldn't believe, I'm not going to lie. I actually even got a little emotional over it, not just because of the nostalgia. It was just the fact that I literally thought, and anybody else that watched that stuff back then, I literally thought we were never going to see this again, because even back then, a lot of these documentaries and shows, they never were, released frequently on VHS or DVD at that time. They were just literally made to be television specials, and your only access to it at that time was you would have had to tape recorded on a separate VHS tape. That would be the only way you'd ever have it. So again, that's why I'm saying whoever this guy is, he really did his homework, because I honestly believe that if not for what he's recorded, I think a lot of this would have truly been lost to time. We would have never even known about this. Like, that really would have shown, because especially now that we have newer and younger generations of paranormal investigators basically joining our ranks, they're gonna start wondering sometimes, saying, how some of them are gonna start knowing, how exactly did this all get started? Well, now that we got these YouTubers that there's also another YouTuber, I can't remember what his YouTube name is, but he's been doing the same thing. So because of this, now we have an option to show that. And I know it's not necessarily something you're supposed to do. I've even downloaded some of the videos myself just so I could have a safe copy of it, not necessarily to upload it, because yes, you still have to worry about copyright, but just knowing how strict YouTube can be and can make you delete some of these videos. And I actually was able to save quite a couple of them from a different YouTuber before I discovered this one. He uploaded maybe a dozen old documentaries, again, from the late 90s, early 2000s, some of which I'd never even seen. There was even one that I found I never even knew about. That there was even one paranormal documentary that was once aired on HGTV. I couldn't believe it, out of all the channels. And I saved them because a few months afterwards, the videos were deleted. But I still have them though, so thank God for downloading.
Absolutely. So you seem to have watched all these documentaries. You're quite up on all the old stuff. We talk about this when we discuss like the cryptid side of the paranormal and all that. You know, when you look back at some of the older books and documentaries and stuff about Bigfoot, the Yeti, and that, they don't tend to talk about them as what if. Right. They talk about the Yeti as existing, like this is how it lives. Yeah. This is where it lives and all that stuff. So looking at the paranormal side of this, we've all seen Ghost Hunters, and you mentioned Ghost Adventures and some of the other modern shows that most people are familiar with now. What is your opinion? How has it changed from these old documentaries to how things are looked at today? Because now everything is so sensationalized and scary, and it has to be a demon, and it has to be all this. What is it? What is the comparison between the stuff that you're watching off of YouTube, these older 80s, 90s videos, to today?
So comparing them to what we have today, it definitely has changed over the last 20 years. Because like I said, when I got started, it wasn't about trying to get best evidence or anything like that. The format really has changed, I think, more than anything else. Because when you watch a lot of the older shows, even the first couple seasons of Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures before it became the way it's become now, unfortunately, again, it wasn't about finding the best evidence. It was just going out, see if they can capture anything. And that was it. But then there were also other shows out there. Like one of my favorite shows, and this, funny enough, this was one of some of the videos I downloaded because this one really got me into it. It wasn't like a full series like some of these other, but it still lasted for at least probably a dozen episodes. I think it was supposed to be more of a mini series than an actual long-lived paranormal series. I don't know if you ever remembered that show. It was on the Travel Channel too, called Haunted Hotels. Do you remember that one? Or
well, I just saw that on TV the other day, a rerun of it.
Oh, that's surprising. I honestly didn't think they'd be running it anymore. But this was again from the early 2000s, so it's one of the older ones. And what I liked about that show in particular was, first off, there were no paranormal investigations at all to begin with. It was just interviewing the owners, historians, eyewitnesses, employees, innkeepers, just sitting and just telling their stories, like whether they had a paranormal encounter of their own, or if they knew somebody, or if they heard about some guest, or that they were just here to talk about the history or the story in general, and it, being accompanied by these really well done, kind of video segments, where they have the special effects, you have a ghost walking around while the story is being told. And there's definitely something far more spooky or more special about those ones, because it's just, to them, it's just, for me, they're just sitting around telling a ghost story. And I think that's what I really like about the older shows, is that it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't about trying to say that everything's a demon, or trying to say, oh, I got this, or did you hear that? It was just sitting around and telling stories. That's what I really love about the older shows.
That's fascinating. The whole history of the paranormal in general has come a long way, because people don't realize, again, a lot of people think that it kind of, shot off from Ghost Hunters, when that's when it really took off, this paranormal investigating and stuff, and around that time frame. But if you look back, I mean, there's the whole Renaissance era of doing the seances and all of that time. And this is, throughout history, there have been highs and lows of, the real interest in the paranormal. It was very popular back in the day. You'd have mediums and stuff and seances, and you go to these parlors. And so there's such a rich history there.
It is. In fact, I've done my research because I've always been kind of curious of how far our history involving the field really goes back. And it really, although some parts of it do date back centuries, they say that the time that it really started really began with a paranormal group, not surprisingly, in the UK. I don't know if you ever heard of the Ghost Club before. Have you ever heard of that group?
Mm-mm.
The Ghost Club, believe it or not, is the oldest operating paranormal group, not just in the UK, but in the world. It's still in operation to this day. It's going to sound hard to believe. It was founded in 1862, but its origins, however, do date back to a few years prior in 1855. So, and some of the most well-known, like British citizens, like even if they weren't truly paranormal investigators, like some of the most well-known British icons throughout the history of the UK throughout the late 18 and early 1900s were also members of the Ghost Club. So from what I can remember hearing was when they first founded this group, I mean, obviously it was a lot more different than what we are today. The Ghost Club was kind of more of a secretive type of like kind of like a fraternity group. Men and women were both allowed to join the group. Not really much of a huge paranormal element to them compared to like what we are today. So I think it's probably safe to say that paranormal investigators of the last 50 to 100 plus years, as well as investigators who have recently passed and us investigators today, it's probably safe to say that we're pretty much direct and all around, not just us here in the UK, all around the world. I think it's pretty much safe to say that we're all pretty much descendants of these original investigators, because there's no doubt in my mind that when they started this group, they probably didn't think it was going to go anywhere, like, because it was something that was never truly done before. Mm-hmm. So obviously, whatever they did during their early days, they were obviously proven wrong. And whether we know about the Ghost Club or not, we've continued their legacy over 100, almost 170, pretty much 170 years later. And I expect ourselves to, even after when we're gone, that it's going to continue on for the next 170 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much history to that. I mean, like, you talk about that, but going back before that, I haven't dug that far into this, but there's a king in a castle or something, and that was like the first ghost investigation ever. Was they had this weird occurrence in his castle, and he brought in these people to try and look into it and see what was going on. And I'm pretty sure that goes back to the first recorded paranormal investigation of anything. So
I think so too. I'm trying to look up his name right now. There was it's been a long time since I've looked it up, but although again, the Ghost Club was really the kind of the first group that really started. I've done even further research back to see if there was anything else prior to like where we are today. And I did uncover two things, one of which is actually very surprising, because it was here in the U.S. It's now believed that, and I honestly really believe this myself, that it's believed that even possibly one of our founding fathers may have actually been a paranormal investigator, and that undoubtedly would have to be Benjamin Franklin, because unlike the other founding fathers, he was very well ahead of his time. He was a very I know for a fact that he was a spiritualist. He definitely believed in the afterlife. So in my personal opinion, I would say he was probably America's very first paranormal investigator, which I don't know how they would have. I mean, I know it was a century after the Salem witch trials, so I'm not sure how people probably would have looked at it back then. I'm sure it would have still been still considered tabooed, but no longer to the point where they were executing people. But I would consider him to be America's first, but the earliest investigator I've uncovered, and again, this is the one I can't find the name of. He was from Europe as well, but this time, however, he was not in the UK. He was actually in what is now modern day Sweden. So having someone from Sweden, I mean, that kind of almost makes me think, well, people always think again that it was the UK that started, but now upon this further research, I actually no, I take it back. I found who he is. Funny enough, his last name even resembles part of the country's name. A man by the name of Emanuel Swedenborg.
But yeah, you don't know this, but I told you we were just live today. This is a pre-recorded show for people watching now. I just had Robert Gavin on the show, and the whole episode was about Emanuel Swedenborg.
Oh my God. Well, and I did my research on who he was, and he was obviously a science, even back then he was a scientist back in the 1700s, and this was even before the United States was ever, I mean, he died before even the founding of America was ever born, but it was said throughout a lot of his career that, yeah, he was mainly a polymath, scientist, engineer, astronomer, and a few other things, but he still had a spiritualistic side to it. So he's as of right now, he's the earliest investigator person I've ever uncovered that I would pretty much say that he's pretty much like what the modern day paranormal investigator is. And again, out of all places, from one of the Scandinavian countries, Sweden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's ironic that this has come back around to that again. But yeah, that was a whole discussion I just had about an hour before recording this. So yeah. as soon as you brought up Sweden, I'm like, oh no, we're going back. This is going back. This evolved back into Swedenborg. Oh man. But yeah, no, that's absolutely fascinating, because I think there's, we talk about looking back at the first paranormal investigators, but when you talk about the paranormal in general, I mean, you look at folklore and mythology and stuff. This is, maybe not investigated, but cultures all over the world talk about spirits and souls and that going back to, written history. And I think that's fascinating, because it's not something that we've just discovered. It's something that's been written about and studied and stuff for, since the dawn of, written word, I guess, or
yeah, like literally for centuries, no doubt. And, again, a lot of people would be surprised when they really trace back to kind of like what I would consider kind of like our paranormal ancestry, like how it all really started. And it's just incredible. Like it really, I'm still destined to see, how further back I can go. In fact, what I've actually done, I haven't made this like a public thing yet, at least not yet. But, understandably, I know just recently that there was like a well-known Bigfoot hunter. I can't remember what her name was, but I know she recently passed away. Although she was 91 years old, however, but still, she was a big active research Bigfoot hunter. But, obviously, even us paranormal investigators, because we're all humans at the end, we all got to go at some point. So knowing the fact that there's been many generations of us, whether it's in the paranormal or cryptid field, and like I said, going back to Emanuel Swedenborg's days, that it inspired me of putting, because I thought to myself, no one's ever truly made because, for example, when you go to certain areas or certain buildings or whatever, or towns or cities, there's always a plaque that dedicates the founders of the people that built it, and also for all of those who've lived there throughout the decades, if not centuries. And I thought to myself, no one's ever truly made a paranormal memorial, to remember our paranormal ancestors. And so that's something that I put together. And it's not, again, I haven't made an official one just yet. If I ever make one, it's understandably just going to be an online one, because I doubt I could ever really put an actual plaque, and exactly where I would put it, I would have no clue. So that's why I'd rather do it online. But it would essentially honor, again, not only just the ancestors, but also, like I said, all of the investigators who have recently passed too. In fact, as of right now, on my phone, on my notes section, I have literally an entire list of not all of them, I know that for a fact, but a good majority of all the investigators throughout, the last almost over 250 years, who have up till today, so everybody who has passed, and that's basically my way of honoring every single one of them. So until I make something like this for online, that is probably the closest I've ever made as far as a paranormal memorial has been created.
That's really cool. That's really cool. That is completely not where I thought you were going with that whole lead up there. I was going to say, you talk about all the investigators and stuff that have passed, and what we're doing now is trying to find evidence, trying to find these answers and stuff. That's what all the paranormal investigators are doing. So I thought you were going down the road of, well, why haven't these people come back to answer that? There's the real famous case of Harry Houdini, who said that, after, trying to debunk all the, what am I trying to say? Not the mediums, all those, the spiritualist movement and stuff like that. And he said, I'm going to come back on Halloween and I'm going to, tell you everything and stuff. And so as far as we've known, he hasn't. And this goes for everybody that's passed away. All the people that have done research into the paranormal and that, why haven't they made a bigger influence on the people that are still researching?
That's a really good question. I often kind of wonder that myself. Like, is it just, I just think sometimes I do think, like, is it just really far too big of a secret to even keep in the afterlife? Like, or do they just don't have the type of true power to do? I mean, it obviously, we're never really going to truly know until we get there ourselves. What I actually do say, and I say this for a lot of for the investigators who have recently passed, I mean, I say this on almost every single post of mine, when I try to give kind of a sort of remembrance for them, but I always end it saying, now you can find all the answers. I mean, whether you could show the appearance or not, now you can find all the answers we've been looking for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's really, it's definitely really interesting. Again, like, it kind of goes back to the point of people say, whenever you see a ghost, it's typically like in period clothing. And you never see somebody like a spirit walking through with a Britney Spears t-shirt on. Right. and that's another thing. Like, I wonder, having had a lot of mediums and stuff on the show and talking to them and stuff, the general consensus kind of feels like after you cross over to the other side, after your spirit moves on, you go back to this source and all the answers, all this stuff, and you realize that it's not important. It's not important for us here to know that stuff, that we're here for a different purpose. And it's not relevant for them to come back and justify, hey, this is what happens after you pass. You already know this. You've already agreed to it. You already know all the answers. I'm not going to come back and, reiterate it for you, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. You put it in a very good way.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just that. Maybe it's not important for us to know what comes next because we already know, we already been there. But it's sure interesting. It'd be a good experiment to try and find a very prominent figure, kind of like Houdini, but obviously that hasn't worked. But somebody else that's, like Swedenborg, that we can go in and specifically get a group of people to try and communicate with him and say, okay, exactly. You have crossed over. You were interested in this stuff. Come back and tell us this,
I also truly believe, and I've heard this recently from some of the other investigators, especially including some of the cons you and I have gone to, that, even for those who have recently passed, there is always that general feeling that even in death, the investigators who have passed are still paying their visits to these cons to show that even though they may have lost their physical body, they still love coming out to the paracons nonetheless. And I honestly, think that I really, truly believe that they come out to almost every single one because that was part of their life and they enjoy doing it. They may not necessarily make their presence known because, well, first off, obviously there's a lot of people around. It would be kind of difficult to do that. But I just think you just have that feeling that they're there one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been at a couple of events where, have you been to MI Paracon when it was still running?
Yes, I was there for the very last one last year.
Okay. So there was a really interesting because they have like 3 or 4 vendor rooms, right? And the one room that has the paranormal people in it, the lights flash in it. Have you ever realized
really?
that?
Wow.
It was it was multiple times that we were there for the convention and stuff, and it's always the room with the paranormal people, whichever room that happens to be, where they have the majority of those, because they kind of break them down into, this was the cryptid room, this is the other weird room or author room or whatever, these are the psychics in this room, and then these are like the paranormal TV people in this room. And it was always the paranormal TV people with like the ghost hunters and Adam Berry and those guys. That room always flickered.
That's interesting.
And I don't know. We were just recently at SilCon in Illinois together. And did you notice the lights flickering there?
Yeah, I did notice it at least once or twice. I was kind of, I mean, yes, I was kind of distracted because everybody, again, wanted to talk to me. But there were times I was thinking to myself, thinking, why the hell are those lights flickering the way they are? It just seems really strange.
There was where my booth was directly across from me. There was a booth that had, I don't know if they were little candles or something she had. And she had,
I think I saw those. Yep.
Okay. So we're setting up, was it Friday morning, and she had already been set up on Thursday, and they started jumping out of the baskets over there.
Oh, wow.
Nobody there. And I never even told her this, but we're setting up, and all of a sudden you hear like crack, and something will like hit the floor, and you look over and there's just one of those little things laying in the middle of the floor. I'm like, what the heck? Yeah,
oh man,
it was really interesting. So I don't know. I feel like there was something in that room, because none of the other rooms, the lights didn't flicker in or whatever. So it's just interesting.
That's quite ironic, I have to admit.
Yeah, awesome. So what else do you do? We talked about like a lot of the history of the paranormal and stuff, but what are you working on now? What are you investigating? What are you interested in researching right now?
Well, for starters, I mean, I don't necessarily have like any locations like planned, at least not yet. I'm hoping. I know, of course, we're kind of getting close to the end of the season, because after October, as we all know, it's going to start getting cold out. But I am hoping that sometime in late March or early April, we could start planning some particular locations, because I want to go to a number. I really want to try to get to a number of new locations. I mean, going to a lot of the old places is fine. I have no problem with, but knowing that there's so many others out there, that's what I'm more interested in. But in the meantime, however, as you probably have seen, that I do my own podcast, which is called the Nick Files, as you can see right behind me. And what I love about, I've been doing that now for over 2 years, although I've kind of taken a break from doing it this year because I've been involved with the audio book projects, which I'll talk about shortly. But my show, Nick Files, to give some description about, is quite unique because it really stands out from a lot of the other, at least as far as I know, it stands out from a lot of the other paranormal podcasts, because unlike many of the other podcasts, which like this one, for example, like, most of them have guests on and whatnot, and some shows also have co-hosts with them. My show does not rely on that. Instead, and not just guests, I almost forgot. And then, of course, you got your other shows where it's just one person, like doing readings or whatever. My show doesn't do any of that. Instead, I present slideshows instead. They're essentially the guest, if you will. Every once in a while, like when it comes to like a historic event, I might have like a few show hosts on so they could actually be part of it. But they're not necessarily guests. They're only just taking part and wanting to give their thoughts and opinions on it. But like I said, when I do these presentations, the presentations primarily feature like a lot of haunted and historical locations. But I've also expanded to cryptids, UFOs. I mean, I'm kind of expanding to almost everything now. And as far as I know, and I'm not trying to claim credit or anything like this, but as far as I know, no other podcast has done what I've done, like, with like putting these, like the amount of work I put into the show. I mean, putting so many slideshows together just to have them ready for another episode or something like that, something like that. To date, no other show has done that. And again, you'd be amazed with the amount of work that I've had to put in with it. But in addition to that, what makes my show also unique too is that when I cover a particular location, I mean, yes, I did kind of start off with this like I started off like this in the beginning, but now I've kind of gone a different direction with the show where, yes, I was focusing on some like the notorious haunted locations, but knowing that there are so many hundreds, if not thousands of other locations out there, whether they're haunted or not. That's why I include the historic locations as well. There are tens of thousands of these locations that do not get as much recognition or attention as some of these, because there are just certain locations out there that for so many years, we put too much attention to. So now I'm focusing on the lesser known locations. Yeah, every once in a while, I'll focus on one of the more notorious ones, but most of the time now I research and I present these locations to the point where people are like, wow, that's actually something I'm surprised I've never heard about. Like, it really is that kind of thing where other investigators would say, where has this location been all our lives? How come we've never investigated this before? How come I've never heard of it before either? So that's what I love about, that's what I really love about Nick Files.
Very cool. Very cool. So let me ask you this. What is your opinion on paranormal tourism? You're talking about all these places that everybody's gone and everybody's researched. And, you get these people that go there because they want to experience that location. Do you think that that's actually doing anything for the research of the community? Or, what is your thoughts on that?
I don't know if it really has a huge primary effect. Like, if people want to go on these tours, like, I would highly recommend it. And I've even told, because I've actually helped out with a few tours in the past when I used to work with Ursula Bielski while she was still doing a lot. I know she's not really doing much of that stuff anymore, but back when she was, I would be helping out with some of these tours, and some of the people I would talk to about whether it's a tour or if it was like an actual paranormal investigation, because, again, not trying to claim credit or anything, because this is actually true, but I was actually one of the very first paranormal investigators to investigate Joliet Prison when they first started doing the tours back in 2018, and along with the public investigations they used to do. So I usually would tell these people, like, I can't guarantee that you're going to experience anything, but there's definitely a lot of stories that we could tell you about some of the past experiences, not just the history, but just things that happen in general. And I think that's what keeps some people going. Yes, you're going to have your share of disappointed viewers. In fact, to throw a quick example out, was one of the last tours I did with Ursula 6 years ago now, back in 2019, was one of the daylight tours too. For the most part, the tour went really well. And then we stopped at this one location. I don't remember exactly what the location was, but it was kind of like out in an open field. And they say that to this day, there's still the remains of a noose by a tree. I don't remember. It's been a number of years, obviously. So we're heading over to the area and we're telling people about it. Ursula's telling, the story about it. And it was a pretty large group. I was further back with a few other people, along with my friend Tom McNicholas. Unfortunately, Tom and I couldn't help but hear some people, like, they thought they were being quiet, but they really weren't. They were having this kind of irritated sound to their voice, thinking like, geez, I paid all this money. We paid all this money to go on these tours and nothing's happened. Like, what the hell? I thought we were going to experience something. And normally I don't show this kind of reaction, but I almost turned around and I had to really resent myself and do it, but I almost turned around and almost harshly said, saying, well, you know what? When you go on these tours, there's no guarantee you're going to experience anything like that. So you just got to deal with it. And if you're not happy about it, then just wait on the bus until we're done. So, of course, I wasn't going to do that because I didn't want to make a scene. But, as far as like research and stuff like that, again, I don't think it has that effect, but I think it may have some sort of little success, for lack of a better term, because then at least, even to some varying degree, some people are going to want to continue, may want to get in, they may want to start doing this stuff and want to be part of groups like us. So that's where I think my satisfaction would rest as far as, as far as the tourism is concerned.
Like a good step into the door, a good way in if you're interested in starting out. Not necessarily something that a seasoned researcher isn't going to go to a location and, have a good time on these tours, but a person that's starting out and wants to get an idea and foot in, right?
Whether it's the tours or the cons, I mean, anybody that either logs onto our websites or our shows or, or just our Facebook pages and group pages in general, or network pages, because we got a lot of paranormal podcasting networks now. They see who we are, they see what we're about, they decide that is something that they live close by, they decide that is something that they want to participate in. It's just like, when you're any group of interest, become a supporter, come on out and support us. If you're able to drive out, come on out to the, tours or events or conventions, see what's up. See what it's all about. See if you like it. See if we like you, and kind of work our way from there then.
Absolutely. Do you think that, going back to all these older TV shows and stuff like that, do you think that the newer TV shows has kind of given a overhyped image of what paranormal investigating is? Like you watch an hour-long show and they give you like the history, and then they go in there and they get all this evidence, and then they recap it, and oh my gosh, a door slammed, whatever, and then they go home. But realistically, I and this is something I haven't talked to a lot of the TV show people, like ghost hunters and stuff. I wonder how many episodes they film or try and film that just get scrapped because nothing happened.
I honestly believe that a lot of the shows have been overhyped. I mean, like I said, although I prefer the older shows, I mean, there have been some of the newer shows from the 2010s and also partially from the 2020s that some have managed to kind of seep through the cracks. I thought, okay, this actually is pretty good because they do it in a really good way. But most of them, unfortunately, are pretty overhyped. Because, again, like I said earlier, it's like they want everything to be a demon. They want to get the best evidence. They want to just jump into conclusion that, okay, this is definitely paranormal or something like that. So that's kind of the disappointing factor, because that's not what I was hoping to see. It's not something I was expecting to see, like when I watched a lot of the older shows. And again, I know I'm not the only one who speaks about that, because there's a lot of people who watch these old shows and they're just thinking, wow, these shows are like so much better than what we got today. It wasn't like, hey, check it out, we're at this location and we're going to encounter a demon or something like that. It wasn't about that at all. Again, it was just going in with the expectation if they were going to experience something or not. In fact, I've never really told much about this very frequently, but a few years ago, I actually tried to create my own paranormal series it was going to be a YouTube series, of course, and I checked to make sure, because I know a lot of titles have been taken. This was one I was really surprised had not been taken sooner, or maybe it has now, but back then it wasn't. It was going to be called Paranormal Travels. And what it essentially would have been was the team that I used to run, the IPF, the way how I kind of thought this was kind of a good start. I thought we would investigate different locations throughout Chicago first, then start expanding to other parts of Illinois and also parts of Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, and if we were lucky, maybe even up parts to eastern Iowa, and then kind of really expand even further out. But the show was going to have kind of like a nod or an homage to another old show from the early 2010s. I don't know, and this was probably one of the last good ones that really did its job well, is Paranormal Witness. Did you ever remember watching that show before? Okay, so my show was going to have kind of a similar format. It was going to have, but the difference was, unlike Paranormal Witness, where you had people that, families, like the victims, if you will, involved moving into these homes. In this case, it was going to entirely focus on us. It was going to be simple, like us sitting down, have a black background behind us. But the other thing that would have been quite unique is when you watch a lot of those other shows, they usually show the reenactments. You have actors out there that, resemble the real people. The difference in this case, and this was something, at least as far as I know, again, had never truly been done before, is that when we would go out to these locations, we would have the entire investigation, as well as even before we get started, filmed. Yes, it may kind of have that sort of kind of like a creepy found footage genre, but this time it would all be real. But when we started to record, like the moment we started recording, we were not under the expectation that we would have any type of activity. Like, we thought to ourselves, if we get something good, if we get something extraordinary, great. If we don't capture anything at all, well, at least we tried. But we would still present that footage, while we're talking about it. So instead, again, the videos in between, instead of reenactments, we're not relying on actors that resemble us. It would be us fully, entirely. So it's to add that kind of realism to it. So that was something that I really wanted to put together. Unfortunately, the series was never picked up because the guys I used to work with at that time were just not that cooperative and were not really on the same page as I was. So the project was dropped. Could it ever come back in the future? I'm sure it will eventually. But as of right now, I just don't have the full crew just yet that's willing to go out on a regular basis to make such a series like this. But I still have hope for it in the future.
Very cool. You definitely seem to have a viewpoint on this whole paranormal thing, like you said, where you enjoyed watching the TV shows because they told you more of the history than the investigation. And, talking about the tours and stuff like that as well, it's more important to tell the stories, the history, and what's actually going on. And that's also a very unique perspective. I appreciate that.
Well, I also think too, when you really think about it, because unfortunately there are a lot of investigators out there, some of which, regardless of whether they capture something or not, that they just do this, just to be famous, and that's never a good thing to do. Like, if you have people out there that are just doing it for the fame, and if they're lucky, money, which most of the time that never happens either way, they're obviously doing it for the wrong reasons then. So when I started putting this series together, it had nothing to do with fame at all. It was something that I wanted to put together because I thought it was, because I had been involved with filmmaking and I wanted to put more of my, filmmaking knowledge, combining both filmmaking and the paranormal into one, and just really try to see if I can get my own independent series together. But also, more importantly too, and this is something you just don't see with a lot of the paranormal shows, especially today, is that, like when you mentioned earlier, like when ghost hunters, would investigate certain locations and certain episodes were scrapped and thrown out and never made it to broadcast because nothing was ever captured. For my series, again, regardless whether we captured something or not, it wouldn't matter to me. In fact, if anything, and this is why I've really thought about this thing, and this really has, I don't think any other show has even done this since, but the show that I was trying to put together almost kind of at times seemed to kind of look more like a training series to show, like, especially a lot of the newcomers that want to join our community. So again, even if they didn't capture anything, it would kind of give almost that educational kind of feel of how a typical ghost hunter investigates. And yes, while I do have a lot of the equipment that, a lot of investigators have, even I had suggest in the interview segments, I would say, yes, it's true. I got a lot of the equipment, but for anybody that wants to get started with this, you don't have to rely on like paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to get all this equipment. I mean, if you have the money for it and you really want to try to like get into it after you get started with it, I would say, yeah, go for it. But I would just simply say, like, getting EVPs, any type of digital recorder is fine. You could even use your phone now in this day and age. I've even spoken with people who use their iPhones now as their EVP recorders. So I always try to make it plain and simple. And I think that's, again, see, I wish again, that the show never, kind of disappeared, because I think such a series like that, especially in this day and age, is desperately needed. Just because I think also I'm trying to show the raw reality and realism of how paranormal investigations work. That's another important factor too that you just don't see with a lot of the modern day paranormal shows, because they go in, there's always something happening, or there's always something happening like every 5 to 10 minutes or so. My show would have almost, again, it's not to cause disappointment, but was supposed to give the reality of what a real investigation is. I mean, I wouldn't say it on the show, but I mean, on the show that I was trying to put together, but it was to certainly give that message, to say that, as much as what you've seen on TV, or even in some of the horror movies, because like the movies, some of the TV shows even do the same thing, but it's to send that message out that, not trying to disappoint, but 90% of paranormal investigating is usually boring. You go to these locations, you investigate them, and for the most part, nothing happens. Or if something does happen, it's usually very brief.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, like I said, people just have this false representation of this. You go on tours, and like you said, people think that something's going to happen every single time you go out. And, if you believe in all this stuff, and you believe that what we're dealing with is the spirits of people, you're literally asking another person to do tricks on command for you. And that's very disrespectful. You go into somebody's house and ask them to turn on a light for you and stuff. It's like,
it really is. And I will admit, like, during my early days of studying the paranormal at a young age, I was one of those people myself. I mean, yes, I was a kid back then, but even then, at the intelligent age that I had, even then I was hoping for stuff to occur. And being like a typical kid, I'd be crying and being upset about it. But it didn't take long for me to realize very quickly that it's not as easy as it seemed. And I was able to become very well educated by the time I was 14 years old, revolving around, like when it comes to certain activity. A lot of people have described it this way now. In fact, see, if this was live, I would know an investigator friend of mine by the name of Chris Binder, who lives in Colorado. I know he would be saying this right now. He probably will when this is recorded. I'm just when this is released. But he, along with many others, have described it as, it's, when it comes to paranormal investigations, it's fishing. You literally are sitting and waiting, and just like fishing, sometimes you get a catch, other times you don't. It's a true waiting game, and there's no guarantees at all. And it's like, well, if you guys think if we didn't catch anything this time, there's always next time.
Absolutely. It's a lot more work than a lot of people think, because even if you sit there for 5 hours at a location, how many audio recorders, cameras, things that you have to look over again once you leave. It doesn't stop once you're done on that investigation. And there's a lot more work that goes into paranormal and stuff than people realize when they just watch it on TV.
I also kind of compare it to, again, this is also another interest I have that I've held it just as long as I've had with the paranormal. And that's, I'm also huge into like weather, like a lot of severe weather and storm chasing, that kind. I haven't been on an actual chase myself, but I've seen a lot of the older documentaries. Once again, I think is the better stuff. But you watch a lot of those shows, and they kind of give the same message too. Where you have storm chasers go out and wanting to chase, film, and if they're scientists, research like tornadoes in this case. They could be driving hundreds, if not thousands, of miles for several days to try to get themselves in the right position, try to, be ready to film a tornado as it touches down. And there are times in which the storm does not do what the storm chaser does. In fact, there was actually a term that's called that. It's called a bust day. And they say the bust day is the most common day for storm chasers out there, because like paranormal investigating, you drive around, yeah, you might have a storm develop, and you think that from the conditions they look favorable, and either you do get a funnel or you get nothing at all. And that leads to this huge disappointment that you traveled along this way but that's just the way how storm chasing is. And just like paranormal investigating, because let's face it, both those kind of interests do have one thing in common, and that is it's very stressful with investigations because yes, I do them during the day too, but some of us, we're up and awake for the entire night and nothing happens. And we're exhausted, of course. Storm chasing, on the other hand, after you've been driving for a while, you get tired and you want to go home. And, of course, obviously it's just not that easy just to turn around because then you got to, if you drove 100 miles out, you now have to drive 100 miles back. And it just adds to the stress related issue. So I honestly believe there is kind of a somewhat connection between those two interests because they kind of have similar results, disappointing results. And they even say, like, for both of them, they'll usually say that maybe like only 1 out of 10 investigators will ever succeed in having, like, in this case, having like a successful chase or having a successful encounter or experience, or if they're lucky enough, evidence.
Absolutely. That goes along with all this stuff. I mean, like, you could make that same analogy for, like you said, fishing, for hunting, for Bigfooting. All that stuff is the same thing. You invest all this time and it's just absolutely hit or miss.
Absolutely. 100%.
Man, well, we are coming up here on the end of the show. I know that you wanted to talk about one of your recent things that you had coming or that you've been looking into. So I want to get that in before we wrap things up here.
So recently, I mentioned about this briefly. I'm working on some audiobooks. Now, these are not actually new ones. These are ones that I put together a few years ago. But unfortunately, because I was brand new into audiobooks at that time, I didn't really know as much knowledge as I do now. So, like, a lot of the books that I've been recording is, first off, are you familiar with the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark trilogy books? Okay, so long story short on those were books I used to be terrified of. I mean, even though I was when I was already into the paranormal and horror genre, those were like the black sheep of the family. Like, it wasn't until I was 17 years old that I finally bought the 3-in-1 book, like 3 books in one, and the Treasury book. That's what it was. And I've been reading it every Halloween season ever since. And I'm going to, of course, now that we enter October, I'll be doing it again. So I've been a big fan of the books, but over the last number of years, there has been a number of other authors out there that have taken inspiration from the original trilogy and have made their own books based on it, and have even gone as far as using the same type of charcoal illustrations like the original books did, that illustrator Stephen Gamble had done. And the very first book that before I get to that, some of these books over the years, including the original trilogy, had audiobooks. And, when you read them and you have the scary pictures in front and you have the audiobook playing, it does make the experience more scary and unsettling. But there have been several of these books, however, that have not had audiobooks, but I've read them. And I just, when I read them, I just think, these stories are really good, but I think it would be a lot creepier if there were actually audiobooks made for some of the ones that don't have them. So there was one of the groups that I've been, that I've asked about was a group called Cemetery Gates Media. So I contacted Cemetery Gates Media and I messaged them and I said, you guys have made some really good books, paying homage to the Scary Stories trilogy, but have you guys ever planned of wanting to make audiobooks out of it? And it was only about a day or two before they got back to me. And they said, well, we didn't really have much interest of putting it out, so I don't think we have the budget of putting it. And that's when I said, well, is there any possibility or chance that I could record them myself? And I'm not asking for money. I'm just doing it for fun. And they said, yeah, go right ahead. So the first one that I ever recorded, I don't know if I don't know if you're going to be able to see it because of the green screen, of course, but
move it directly in front of you.
Yeah, I know it's kind of stressful because I have a green screen, but sorry, I was trying to look for. Okay, here we go. Actually, I could turn off the green screen right now. I think, or at least I think I can. Oh wait, here. Okay, here we go. All right, so I can turn it off. So there we go. Yeah, so the very first book that I ever recorded, this is called Corpse Cold New American. Okay, it's kind of dark. Corpse Cold New American Folklore. This came out back in 2017, I believe. And as you can see, it has the similar illustrations to the original trilogy. Now, just to be clear, I did not write this book. I didn't have anything to do with it. The only thing I did was just record it. But unfortunately, when I first recorded this back in 2020, like I said, going back to, I didn't have as much knowledge. When I started re-listening to it around like 2 years ago, I realized there were a lot of hidden errors that were mixed in. There were mispronunciations, some words were missing, parts of sentences were even missing. And there were also just times that I was just simply reading way too fast. So with that being said, I've had to go back and make several repairs, not just on this book, on at least two other books I got to work on. One's already fixed up. So I'm going to be re-releasing a lot of these audiobooks. I'm not sure if I'm going to have them all re-released in time for the October Halloween season, but I am working around the clock of getting them put out there. And if given the opportunity, the podcasting networks that I'm a part of, I'm also going to try to broadcast these as we get closer to Halloween. So in a way, they will essentially be, if there's no podcast running during a certain time, they will essentially be our Halloween specials for our networks. And that is something that I'm really looking forward to doing. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be great.
Awesome. That sounds great. I love audiobooks. I work third shift so I can listen to books or podcasts all night. But, people ask me, well, do you read these things? I'm like, if it's not an audiobook, I don't read it, because I don't have the time to physically sit down and look at a book. So a lot of like the authors and stuff that we meet at these conventions and stuff, I don't get to read a lot of their books. So when I have them on the show or something, I will ask them, do you have a PDF of your book? Because if I can get a PDF, I have a reader that will read the PDF to me like an audiobook. And it's very monotone and very crappy, but you get the gist of it and you get the knowledge and you get to hear the audiobook of the research and stuff. So I highly recommend anybody else that's in my position. Audiobooks are great. So.
Well, not only that, I've also, just to also add one other addition, one of my other projects that I made about almost 4 years ago now, another tribute book. It's called Nightmare Soup, which they're releasing a couple new books. They're supposed to have a new one come out sometime in October called Nightmare Soup Bloody Bites. Now, strangely enough, when they started making these books over a decade ago, they came out with Nightmare Soup in 2016. Then it wasn't long that a sequel was going to come out. They made Nightmare Soup 2, The Second Coming. Strangely enough, they made an audiobook for the second one, but they never did for the first one. So I did the exact same thing. I contacted them and I said to them, you guys did a great job on the second audiobook, but are you guys going to make one for the first one? So they got back to me and they said, we're going to try to make it. Of course, a few months go by, not heard anything. And I'm not trying to push. It's just that I'm just so eager of wanting to know. So about half a year goes by and I decide to reach out saying, how's things going? And they decide, they got back to me and they said, unfortunately, they were not going to be able to have the budget to produce it. So I once again offered, if I could record it for the first book. And they said, go right ahead too. But I decided to take it one step further because this was something because before that, the other audiobooks I did was just recorded by me. I had this really cool idea. I thought, because there's so many paranormal podcast hosts that I've worked with or I've appeared on shows with, such as this one, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I can get some of the paranormal podcast hosts to record a story from this book? And they're short stories too. They're just only like some of them are only like 2, maybe 3 pages at most. And so I reached out to a lot of different podcast hosts and they all agreed to take part in it. So that's the first series that it's recorded other than myself. And currently I am trying to put together another one. It's for the third Nightmare Soup book. And I know some people, again, would ask, saying, well, why isn't the second? Since I already said there's an audio book for that one, it's not necessary to work on the second one. So we're just jumping right to the third. But right now I got to focus on the older audiobooks first, the re-releases, before I get to this new one. But we got some of the show hosts that were involved in the first one are coming back for the third book. I got a couple new ones who recorded their stories. Some of the others are interested, and I'm not going to say exactly one just yet, but I've also I even expanded even further for future projects like this. I've even reached out to some of the big names like Brian J. Cano, Aaron Sagers of Paranormal Con on Camera, Heather Taddy, Dave Schrader, to name a few. I talk to them almost the same way I've described these audiobooks, these projects, and I just thought it'd be kind of cool, like if they would be. Jenny Davis is another. No, she really wants to do it. I was kind of describing it, and I asked if that would be something that if they have a few minutes of their time that they'd be willing to do, and I'm very happy to see that most of them have agreed. And when I'm going to get started with this project, they will eventually be, recording stories, whichever ones they want me to send to them. So I even got some of the big television names involved in these audiobooks, and that's just fantastic. I'm really excited that they accepted the offer.
That's really cool. That is awesome, man. Well, you definitely have a lot going on here, so
I really do.
I wish you the best of luck on all that stuff. I mean, I know like I know all my projects and stuff. I got a lot going on, and I know how much that takes on you. So best of luck with all that to you. I hope everything turns out.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I'll keep everybody updated like I usually do. I mean, because I post a lot of that information on Facebook and elsewhere. So, like I said, it's a lot of work to put together, but in the end, it's totally worth doing.
Cool, man. Well, we are at the end of our show. I don't want to keep you, but I know that when we talked before the show, you wanted to talk about patches and music.
Well, not necessarily the patches. I was only just referring to like the cryptids on the patches. So
Gotcha. Okay.
This is something that is not involving me, but I just want to let people know about this. In fact, if it's all right with you, Barnaby, I'm going to share the screen. Just before I do, just so I can give you an idea of what I'm going to talk about. So a few days ago, like I always do every October, I was looking for some new Halloween music I was going to add to my music list. And this was accidental, but I came across this new music list that I've never seen before. In fact, it was just released like 4 or 5 months ago. And when I looked at what it was actually called Tales from the Shadows. I was like, at first I thought it was an audiobook. Because it sounds like an audiobook series. But then I realized it was actually music, and I'm only just going to show an image because obviously it's music. I don't want to give copyright issue. I could not believe what each song had. It was discussing like different paranormal entities and cryptids out there. It had like the first song was about the Mothman. Next one was like Bigfoot, Jersey Devil. Even some of the lesser known cryptids out there, like let's see, like the Devil Monkey, and also I'm going to show the pic. Oh, there's Black Eyed Kids. I mean, there's just this huge list. Beasts of Bladenboro. I mean, it's just I couldn't believe what I was finding, and I'm going to share the screen in just a sec so you can get an idea of what it looks like. And I'm just going to keep the video paused, but show the image of it. And it's just incredible. I mean, I fell in love with the series. I mean, with this music series as soon as I discovered it. So here you go. Okay, so yeah, can you see that right now?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So they have all these different songs that, like I said, first one is Mothman, Walkers in the Fog, Fresno Nightcrawler. What's that?
The Wings Over the River.
Wings Over the River for Mothman, 13 Child, Jersey Devil, the Thing in the Swamp, the Falk Monster. I mean, it's Thing in the Cypress, Skunk Ape. I mean, I couldn't Thing from Enfield Horror, and that's one of the least known cryptids out there. I mean, I just could not believe that whoever this band is, they went out of their way to make this music list, and they've made two different albums on. Oh, whoops, sorry. They made a second volume too, focusing on the Appalachian area. So like you have like the Devil, like I said, the Devil Monkey, Sheep Squatch, all these different Beasts of Bladenboro. I mean, it was an incredible find, and I've been hooked on it ever since. So I hope they made 2 volumes. I really hope they make a third one, because there's never been a music list like this that focuses on, as it says on the bottom of the list, songs of cryptids, curses, and unquiet things.
Very cool. Very cool, man. Well, I will look that up, and I will get a link in the show notes as well to their playlist and stuff, and we'll throw that in there for everybody. Do you have anything else? Like, where can people find your podcast? Where can people find more about you? Any events that you're going to be at coming up?
So yes, you can find me on most of the time. You can find me on Facebook, but also YouTube if you want to listen to my audiobook stories. But as far as the actual networks, I mean, I'm on several networks, but the main networks that I'm a part of is called the Things Network, which just so everybody can get an idea of which, I should have kept the page on share. Let me share the page one final time, because I know for a fact that there's other pages that go by that name. So give me 1 second here, so you guys have the correct one.
Shoot me the links once we're off the air here, and I'll throw them in the show notes as well for everybody.
Yeah. Just give me a second here while I'm getting it ready. Okay, yeah. So here we go. So this is the first network. This is the Things Network, which also, by the way, we're about to be approaching our 4-year anniversary. We've been around now for 4 years. So that is, and also this is the actual, I should have kept it like this. So yeah, this is the page itself if you want to find us. And the other network that I'm a part of, which is also my own network, this was founded earlier this year. It's called the NWSM Multiverse Network. And I believe, let me see here. I'm just trying to get the right page up because we have a private page as of right now. Okay, yeah, this is it. This is it right here. And this has kind of almost become kind of like the European counterpart to the Things Network, because the NWSM stands, obviously the N stands for my name. Obviously, it features everybody here. It features me. Willow stands for Lois, who's from Scotland. And then we got Shane and Mary, who are both from the Netherlands. So it's a full-on European network, and it's definitely a success. I would definitely highly recommend that at some point you should have some of them on your show on some future episodes.
Absolutely. Get me in touch with them.
Yeah, I definitely will. I'll put the word out for them, and maybe at some point soon we could try to get you on some of our shows for that matter.
Sounds good, man.
But you can find me on those. There's a lot of other networks. I don't want to go too much sharing into it, but those are the two main networks that you can find me at.
Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, we'll get the links for everybody in the show notes when you're watching this. And we are pre-recorded today as well, just to remind everybody if we're ignoring comments or anything throughout the show here. But awesome. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap things up?
Not very much. Just all I could really just say is that, it's, the fact that I've been involved with this field for 20 years, it's definitely been a great 20 years. And of course, I know we're getting close near the end of the investigation season, aside from, obviously welcoming the Halloween season, which I'm really excited about. But of course, obviously we'll be doing it all over again for 2026, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm hoping we'll be able to get out. And, again, it's been great doing this for 20 years, and looking forward to doing this for many more years to come.
Awesome, man. Well, I look forward to the next time we get to see each other at the next convention. I know we'll probably see each other pretty soon. So,
yeah, I'm sure we will. So, yeah, well, I know we'll cross paths again real soon. And you're only a state away from me, so we're not even that far from each other.
That's right, man. That's right. Awesome. Well, it's been awesome. Great talking to you, getting to know you, because like I said, see you at all these conventions and we never really get a good chance to chat. So it's been awesome getting the chance to hang out with you and then pick your brain and stuff. So
exactly. And if you ever want me back on, to talk more, I'm more than happy to come back on in the future.
Oh, absolutely, man. Sounds good. All right. Well, that is it for today. I thank you for coming on again.
Yeah. Thank you again so much for having me. This has been great.
Awesome, man. You take care.
All right. Take it easy.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember to check out all of Nick's stuff, all the networks. We will get them in the show notes for you once this airs live, and you can go and click and go and subscribe, like, and share all of his stuff. Remember to like, subscribe, and share all things here on the Untold Radio Network as well, and Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Until next time, guys, remember, we're all part of the Paranormal Spectrum. Take care, be well, and I'll see you next week.